Hey everyone, and welcome to Hero's Journey Physio Fitness. Our mission is guiding people to reclaim their health and become self-reliant. I'm your host, Dr. Cameron Hogue, and joining me is my co-host, Annabelle Rios.
All right, we are going live in 3, 2, 1. Welcome, guys, to another episode of Hero's Journey. Me and Cam here. I think we've already mentioned in the past episodes, we're working on transitioning more to an interview style, trying to get different guests on to come on, speak on different topics. Today's guest is going to help us kind of work through some of the common questions you have when it comes to running. Shoe wear, how to get off the couch and run your first 5K, injury prevention, and much more. Cam, who's this guest that we have on today?
All right, everybody, we have Dr. Dusty Dischler. I'm going to give you, like I always do, just a little bio, and then we'll kind of get into the episode. So Dusty graduated from physical therapy school from LSU, and he's been working as a physical therapist for around 10 years. He has been doing competitive running for around 10 years now, middle school, high school, junior Olympics, D1 college, and obviously post-collegiate afterwards. He's done 3 years of coaching for middle school, high school, track and cross country. And he has over 4 years of experience as a professional fitter at the Fleet Feet store and sport. We'll have to dive into that. I'm really excited about having Dusty on. I'm going to go on a little bit of a tangent here because Dusty's the real deal when it comes to rehab and running and all things like that, shoe wear. And you just see a bunch of crap on the internet now where people can literally put on social media that there's some sort of specialist and they have no experience. Dusty has over 10 years, a lot of it with running, over 4 as a professional fitter. And there's just some crap out there, but Dusty's the real deal. So hopefully you guys get some value out of this episode. Dusty, thanks for being on, man.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Is there any background that we did not hit on there before we kind of dive in?
No, you nailed it. To run 4 years in a smaller Division I school, Northwestern State University of Louisiana. Had some fun with that and got to experience a lot of things, travel a little bit with that, and kind of had a little bit of a hiatus and kind of started couch to half marathon this past winter. And so it's fun to be competing again, training a little more regularly, and being truly invested and involved in the community that I serve. So.
What kind of running were you doing in college? Was it more track and field, or was it more cross country?
Both, yeah.
Okay.
I did, cross country anywhere between 5K and 10K. Most of the races were about 5 miles. And then indoor and outdoor track, I ran everything from 1500 distance medley relay, 3K indoor track, and then 5K and 10K in my junior and senior years.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Did you watch any of the Olympics this year?
I've watched most of the Olympics this year. Yeah. The races were crazy.
Oh my gosh, man. They are so fast. Like when I was seeing, who was it that won the 100 for the men's? Noah Lyles, I think that's what his name was. Holy smokes, man. He was quick. And the women's 4x4, 100 and 400 meter, they were lights out.
Unbelievable. Super talented. Men's 4x1, wish we could hold on to a baton a little better, but things happen. But yeah, it was amazing. It was amazing on the distance aspect too. The United States really came through and 3K steeple, 1500, showing our face for the first time in a really long time. It was a lot of fun to be a middle distance guy.
So, Annabelle, I think you have the first question because this was one that...
Yeah, so I think it's, okay, a lot of people want to get into running, and I think a common first goal that most people have is a 5K. So clearly you've run plenty of 5Ks in your career. If someone wants to come up to you and say, how do I get off the couch to running my first 5K? What would you say?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, it's a slow, you have to start low and slow on these things. And even something as simple as a 5K, if you've never run one before, really, I mean, I would say get out and just try to run a mile. And, just the next day, take a day off, maybe do like a 30-minute walk, and do that, cycle, kind of run every other day, run a mile, mile and a half, and then walk, and just get your legs used to just the repetition, walking 30, 45 minutes. And then on your run days, running a mile, running a mile and a half, and then each week kind of trying to bump it up a little bit, whether it's a quarter mile or a half mile. Yeah, give yourself 10, 12 weeks, if you've never done one before, and just let your body get used to the reps of the pounding. And make sure you're integrating some of that with some strength training, strengthening the arches of your feet, strengthening your calves, strengthening your hips, all the things we'll talk about, I'm sure, later on in this podcast.
Yeah. So
is it okay to walk though? Because what if
It
somebody
is
says
okay to
like,
walk.
I can't even
Absolutely.
run 5 minutes.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I mean, it may be, run a quarter mile and walk half mile, and run a quarter mile, and walk a half mile, and maybe that's where you start. Yeah, a mile may be too ambitious, and it's definitely okay to walk. A lot of times, most of these programs, they do it on a time, so you run for a minute, walk for 2 minutes or 3 minutes. Those kind of cycles. So it really just depends on where your base fitness is. But it's definitely okay to walk. It's more about just getting your legs used to doing that motion. So
yeah, no, I totally agree, man. I feel like the biggest thing with running is the impact, where like your lung capacity might maybe be good enough to run more than your legs will let you, because you're like, oh my gosh, my knees are hurting, and my legs are hurting right now. Like, I feel maybe okay with my lungs and my lung capacity, but man, the impact is really getting me.
Absolutely.
Do you, with the kind of potentially moving up like a quarter mile into maybe a half a mile, is this you're saying like every other day? Is this like you run Monday, you take off Tuesday and walk or whatever, and then you go back and run Wednesday? Are you bumping it up a quarter or half mile that day, or are you waiting for the next week, or how does that work?
Waiting for the next week. So typically the rule of thumb is the 10% rule. And so you're not wanting to increase your total mileage more than 10% a week. So so if you ran 10 miles this week, next week you would run 11. Um, that makes sense, and so on and so forth. And you just gradually build. Again, if you've never run at all, so then we have to start really low, and just work your way up. Again, sort of the walking comes into play.
Yeah.
And then, like I said, it may be run a minute and then walk for 2 minutes, run a minute, walk for 2 minutes, do 3 to 5 cycles of that, and then take the day off the next day. Try to go back and do the same thing on Wednesday.
Yeah.
Thursday, walk again. Friday, try to do the same thing. And then maybe get a little bit longer walk on Saturday or Sunday. Give yourself a break on one of those days altogether. So,
Yeah.
and then just work your way up from that. So it just, and in those run walks, you're of course going to start with, good warm up. We'll talk about that, in a 5 minute or so, just warm up walk, just get some blood flowing. But when those 1 minute runs feel comfortable and feel like, oh, I could probably go a little bit more, maybe that's time to bump it up the next time. So
that makes sense. Yeah. So inevitably, maybe not inevitably, I shouldn't have said that. Most likely, when people start getting into any sort of physical activity, especially running, they're going to start to, I'm starting to feel a little something in my knee. Ooh, I'm starting to feel something in my low back, or ooh, my hip. I'm starting maybe to feel some pain. What are some maybe common injuries that you see when it comes to running? And then maybe we can dive into like, when is it time to seek some professional help like yourself?
Sure. Yeah, I think the most common ones we see, IT band syndrome. We either see approximately at the hip or down lateral side of the knee, runner's knee, patella tendonitis, those kind of things, right above or below the kneecap. And then plantar fasciitis course, it's one that we've all probably heard of, and bottom of the foot, and then that can kind of bleed into either posterior tib tendonitis or Achilles tendonitis as well, which those things can all kind of get misdiagnosed or underdiagnosed or mixed up sometimes, depending on the situation and how flared up it is. But those are some of the most common ones we see. When do you come see me? Really, if you happen to alter your training plans or discontinue running altogether because of the pain, if you have decreased quality sleep or quantity of sleep, because of course that's when our bodies heal the best. And so if our pain is keeping us from sleeping well, we're probably not going to be running very well or doing life very well. So, and then if the pain is just persistent or worsening and not getting any better with home remedies, ice, ibuprofen, stretching, those sort of things.
So how can someone avoid seeing you in a PT sense?
Hannibal doesn't want to see me. He doesn't want to see you.
What if I don't want to see you? How can I prevent some of these injuries? What do you recommend?
No, I tell my runners that I see at Fleet Feet or at the clinic, single leg balance is a huge predictor. You spend, that's the whole run is you're constantly switching back and forth in single leg stance. So that's my number one. I was like, if you only do one thing to help you, improve your quality of your runs and decrease your likelihood of injury, focus on single leg balance. I recommend doing it twice a day while you're brushing your teeth. Advocating for my dentist over here.
Let's go.
If you brush your teeth properly, 30 seconds each quadrant of your mouth. You get 30 seconds on one leg. Switch legs when you switch sides of your mouth. It's 30 seconds 4 times, twice a day. It's built into your routine. You don't have to do anything extra or try hard or think about it. So,
mouthwash or no mouthwash?
I mean, hey, might as well do it then too, right?
Get me looking up.
Right. But the other ones are just working lateral hip strategies. So things like monster walk, sidestepping, single leg step downs or single leg squats. Those are all great things to work on, strengthening the outsides and of our hip and the backside of our hip to make us more efficient. And it can help reduce our injury to our knees and so forth. And then the last thing I would say is getting into some sort of routine with calisthenics. You don't have to join a gym or have any heavy weight. Of course, weight training is great for runners, but even just some simple calisthenics and plyometric training is great, for efficiency, injury prevention, and increasing like durability of our ligamentous and tendon systems. So
that's great. So this is like I don't know if it's like a 2-part here, but so like there's probably there's this certain people that are trying to get into running, and those people might not like it, that type of crowd where they're trying to get into it. They know the health benefits. But then you got your runners who are going to probably run through injuries and and that kind of crowd. So do you find that with the second type, the type that is all into running, do you find it hard to get them into like weight training or calisthenics or any sort of that type of thing? Because runners want to run, you know what I mean?
Right.
What's your experience with that?
Yeah, it can be. I think it depends on the level of seriousness and competitiveness that they are. I think if you're in most of the ones that are competitive, understand that is part of it, and that is something that's going to help prevent them from coming to see me, and so it will keep them running. Versus kind of the weekend warriors, they don't really want to have anything to do with that, and they just want to go and run to the taco shop and have 99-cent tacos on Tuesday or something, and there's nothing wrong with that. Like, I go to the Wednesday pub runs and go get my 20% discount on my beer. So there's nothing wrong with those guys. But yeah, I think that's kind of the difference. They kind of you could tell the people that are out there on the podium winning their age groups or whatever versus the ones that are just like excited for the camaraderie and having a good time. There's a difference between who you see in the parking lot warming up and stretching and the ones that are just like taking
I
selfies
just
and,
run.
yeah. So,
Quick question for you. What would be a good lifting to running ratio? If they actually
yeah,
want to get serious about lifting, what would be a good ratio
yeah,
for that?
I think, I think you can get a lot of benefit with 2 days a week on the lifting, and usually recommend doing those lifting on either an off day of running or a very like easy light day, of running, um, or your walk day if you're just starting out. Um, yeah, the weightlifting, it really should be geared more towards, you're not really looking for the power.
Hmm.
So, it's more of the low weight, high repetition. I prefer to do a lot of that in the single leg variety. So if you're doing leg day, you want to do, some lunges or split squats or something like that, kind of help challenge the system. That's going to kind of mimic what you do in a run. Um, but then also you want to work on upper body things as well. So we want to have strong core, strong back muscles, so we can use our arms efficiently to pull us through. So things like rows,
Mm-hmm.
are great. Back extension, to help kind of keep us upright, so we're not collapsing and falling apart. Great, so
Hmm.
those kind of things, work really well. So.
Is it true if you're a runner, you can't do bicep curls? Is that right? Is that kind of like off limits?
You could totally do some bicep curls and just not trying to max out every time.
Um, so Dusty, let's talk about maybe running form here and kind of like the biomechanics
Hmm.
of running. And it is hard on a podcast some people can see us if they're watching on YouTube, but if you're even just listening, like we're not demonstrating anything. So this might be kind of hard to kind of talk about and stuff like that. But first of all, what is proper running form when it comes to how your foot strikes the ground? And then are there any tips to like improve your running form to also, the whole thing of avoiding injury? Like a lot of people just don't want to get injured when they run. So is there any tips on like
Sure.
how to do that?
Man, you remember when you asked me about those off-limit questions? This was one of them.
Oh, shoot.
No, you're good.
I scratched right
It,
through that.
I will say it varies. I've seen some really bizarre looking running forms, and it works really well for those people. It's not a one size fits all. We have to look at just kind of your stature, how you're built as a human, and what will make you the most efficient runner. So my answer is going to be, a pretty cop out answer. It's going to say you need to find a good running coach or a PT that's got some experience in watching and analyzing runners, and trying to figure out what works best for you. In general, most people, you want to focus on some of the tried and true things, even though it looks funny. It's kind of like a baseball swing. Some baseball swings are super unorthodox, and
Hmm.
then like, but those people, just it works for them. And running forms are kind of the same way, but there are some things that are very similar and tried and true. And one of the things is like when you have that turnover, your foot is landing pretty close to underneath your center of mass, your body. So you're not landing with your foot way out in front of you. That'll cause things like shin splints. That'll
Hmm.
cause things like, knee pain, hamstring strains, things like that if you're overstriding. So a general rule is your cadence should be, if you're efficient, it should be in that 175 to 190 range of strides per minute. So that's something that if you have an Apple Watch, a Garmin, Cora, something like that, it'll be able to tell you that on your run what your turnover is like.
Hmm.
Um, so that's one thing we look for is like for your stride efficiency, and that all starts with landing your foot underneath you, so and not overstriding.
So it'd be
Um,
fairly difficult to hit that stride per minute repetition if you were overstriding and kind of reaching out in front of your body, right? Because you wouldn't be able to get as many
Correct.
in. Okay, just want to make sure.
Correct. Um, yeah, other than that, I mean, in general, most of us, especially novice runners, are going to be landing more on their heel, and then the goal is kind of rolling and pushing off of your big toe. Um, that's, pronation, and that's normal. And we always think of pronation as something that's bad, or something we're trying to correct or fix. And really, pronation is a normal part of your foot unlocking and pushing off the big toe. Um, but if we overpronate, if we do it, out of control, or without muscle contraction, and it's just doing it over and over again because you have a weakness, then that's gonna cause you to have things like posterior tib tendonitis,
Hmm.
plantar fasciitis, things like that. Um, and so that's when corrected footwear or orthotics are appropriate. So, uh, other than that, yeah, I mean, upright posture, you want to look at your upper body as well. You don't want to be falling forward and like head down, you want to be upright looking ahead, but you also don't want to be leading with your belly button pushed forward either. You want to kind of have a little bit of a forward trunk lean, but still maintaining an upright posture. So,
No, that makes sense. I had a friend, and we ran a half together, and
mm,
it was funny because, like you're saying, don't neglect the upper body, because at the end of the race, again, it could have just been what he was wearing, but I want to say that he had like his shoulders like more rounded forward because he was kind of like more going side to
mhm.
side, and he said he couldn't lift his arms over his head. He had so much like chest and anterior shoulder pain from being
Yeah,
like this, like the whole 13
sure.
miles, that he just didn't think about it. And then afterwards, he's
Yeah.
like, I can't raise my arm. He got better, but he like couldn't raise his arm for a couple of
Yeah.
days.
Yeah, your arms are your pistons, so you want to have relaxed hands. I used to train gravel road, and my dad would make me hold rocks in my hands, and
Wow.
he had to like hear the rocks bouncing in my hands because he don't want me to run it with a clenched fist. So with loose fists, elbows kind of relaxed, and that's where your lack of bicep curls come in a while. So you don't want to have tight biceps. You want to have your elbows kind of loose, and make sure that your arms are staying by your side, not really coming across your body.
That was some
So
Rocky
that
crap
those
right
would be
there,
some,
man.
yeah, right. So that's some other things to think about from an upper body perspective. But I've seen people run with their elbows almost straight and their hands like straight out,
Oh my
like
gosh.
it's crazy. But I mean, the guy ran like a 150 or 148, 800 meters. So no one was
Jeez.
changing his form. He looked like a robot out there, but I mean,
He
he
was
was
a
a
quick
machine for
robot.
real. So
What about breathing? I know breathing is such a big
yeah,
thing when it comes to running, and some people feel like it seems like they're not breathing. I guess what kind of advice, what do you recommend when it comes to that?
sure. Relaxed jaw. That's one thing. Like you don't want to clench up your jaw muscles. You
Mm,
don't want to like so. Um, there was actually an interesting article that talked about, I can't remember what magazine posted it, but about they were talking about the sprinters, specifically Shakari Richardson and
Hmm.
everybody. Like you have these girls running 100 meters in 10 point something seconds, and like none of them are running with their mouth wide open, and they're not gasping. They're just running with their mouth closed and breathing through their nose. And there's a lot of like they kind of went into the research of like your body voiding nitrogen or something. I can't recall it off the top of my
Yeah.
head, but in general, one thing you notice is they're very relaxed. Tip of your tongue on the roof of your mouth kind of helps relax and open up that jaw a little bit. Just let the air flow more naturally. Um, and a lot of people will coach like breathing in through the nose, out through the mouth. Um, I'm a mouth breather, so like
Dusty,
I kind of
no.
don't. I'm that guy. Not loud, but I kind of always just coach get oxygen in however the hell you can, and it's fine. Um, but yeah, big thing is just relaxing, and yeah, especially like in the winter time, like breathing in through the nose helps like warm up the air. It's
mm.
brutal up here in Tennessee, and having going out on runs when it's 15, 20 degrees, you definitely notice a difference with that. So
Oh yeah, for sure. So, I mean, this is kind of related because we were talking
Hmm.
about like striding underneath, like landing underneath yourself and the cadence and everything.
Hmm.
So let's talk about some shoe wear. Um,
Hmm.
I mean, I know you've been a professional fitter for over 4 years now, so and I know it's probably going to vary some, but
Sure.
um, can you just tell us a little bit about the different types of running shoes and how it would potentially affect, a runner's mechanics or even like maybe potentially even like injury? Like I know like the mechanics would lead to injury, but yeah, maybe
Sure.
talk about the shoe wear and then how it affects mechanics.
Absolutely. So you have two different types of shoes that we fit people. For someone that is a neutral stance individual, or someone that supinates, which is kind of when you roll to the outside of your foot when you walk. Um, those people tend to do better in neutral fitting shoes versus stability shoes, or designed for people who tend to pronate or are more like flat footed. Um, Very simple at home way to test is if you like step in a bucket of water and you step on the concrete or some type of flooring where you can see what your footprint is, or step on a piece of paper. Um, if you don't have a whole lot of imprint on the middle part of your foot, you may have like a higher arch. It's going to tend to go with a more neutral foot, and if a big flat footprint is on the ground, or more of that mid part of your foot is visible on the impression, then you're gonna probably require more of a stability type shoe. So that's kind of your two big types, and that's some things we look at. Different running stores have different ways of doing that. There's some stores that have mats you can kind of walk across, and it basically like kind of takes a picture impression of how your foot is moving across the mat. We have a little scanner that does a 3D scan of the foot, and it pulls up a static impression of the foot. And some people just do it the old school way and just watch people walk. And those people are just trained to see different things. I think it's good to see the picture. It's something easy to show the client or the patient. Um, but I also do watch them walk, and I'll watch them stand in single leg stance, because that's another easy way to be able to find some little nuances there that I know from a PT perspective as well. So, and then
So like
really outside of that, oh, go ahead.
so a neutral fitting shoe, does that mean it
Hmm.
doesn't have a lot of arch support? Is that what that's saying?
Correct.
Okay, gotcha.
Correct. Basically, it is just say vessel for your foot with a lot of cushion or not a lot of cushion.
So
um,
that could also be like a minimalist shoe.
Correct. Minimalist shoes tend to err on the side of neutral, although some do have support built into them. And really, all a minimalist shoe says is that the plane from your heel to your toe is relatively flat,
Mm,
instead of being pitched forward. So traditional
mm,
shoes tend to have what they call a drop of 8 to 12 millimeters.
mm,
And that's the pitch of the shoe from the heel to the toe. And so it kind of lifts your heel up. It engages more of your calf muscle, um, and that gastrocsoleus complex. With a minimalist shoe, the drop is much less. In some cases, like Ultra, it's a zero drop shoe for the most part, although they've just came out with a new model that has a bit of a drop.
mm.
But really, a minimal drop shoe would be something 5 millimeters or under. So some Hokas, even though they have big, thick cushions, still fall into that category of 5 to 6 millimeters. Um, Topo is another brand. I have a lot of 3 to 5 millimeter shoes, and then Ultra is known for the zero drop, so having a net zero between the heels and the toe, and so that's supposed to mimic more of a natural barefoot style stride. And what you'll see is those shoes often have a wider toe box as well to
Mm.
allow your foot to naturally splay out. and mimic more so how our mechanics are supposed to be. But what you'll find is that also engages a lot smaller muscles that oftentimes aren't used in more traditional style of shoes. And so things like your peroneals and your posterior tib muscles, um, you'll they'll get used a little bit more, and so you'll notice a little bit more soreness in those areas and things that would get mistaken for shin splints and things of that nature if you just go and run 8 miles out of the box and never running in those type of shoes before. You may feel a little bit more beat up, and that would be the reason why. So
Yeah, I ran or trained and ran a half marathon in some minimalist shoes. They were zero drop, like you're
mhm,
saying, wide toe box.
mhm,
And first started training, and dude, my posterior tib and peroneals
mhm,
and calf really was so
mhm,
sore when I foam rolled it almost brought a tear to my eye. I'm not gonna lie, it
mhm.
brought a tear to my eye. It was so
Yeah.
painful because I hadn't worked, and after like a week or so training, it got better. Like I was like, I need to
Mhm.
back off some. But man, I was tender to the touch. It almost felt like I had a fracture in my
Yep.
tibia because it was just so tender. But
Absolutely.
yeah, those muscles engaging, man.
So I guess
Yep.
on that topic, I'm sure you've probably heard of the book or read the book Born to Run, right?
Yep.
Yeah. So I mean, who? Hmm.
Wait, did you say you hadn't read it?
You haven't read it?
No, I have read it.
Yeah, he
Okay.
was joking.
Oh.
I picked up what he put down. It's like, who are barefoot shoes really for? Like, give me a case on like who the ideal individual would be, because I think a
Mhm.
lot of times people may get them, and if you've never used those muscles before,
Right.
you may lead to an injury. So
For
who would
sure.
you recommend that to? Or
Yeah, I mean, I think somebody that falls into that neutral category. I mean, I think most people in that realm can I think they could get by with it, with proper education and just knowledge that like, hey, this is to be expected, and like just easing into it. Um, but if someone is all about the zero drop shoes and they are a massive overpronator and maybe have some other deformity or maybe um, significantly overweight, like that might be, hey, you may want to like have a little more structure to your shoe. Um, let's start there and then explore. But another thing, I'm not against them at all. And if someone wants to wear them zero drop shoes on their off days, I'm totally about that. Like it still works. You're still working on training those muscles. You're just not beating them up on your run.
mm-hmm.
But I think it's great. I mean, I try to be as barefoot as much as I can be at home or where it's socially acceptable.
Grounding, baby.
But no, I mean it's definitely important to help keep those muscles strong and engaged. And so I mean, even if it's the person doesn't on paper look like they would be an ideal person to be trying running in zero drop shoes or minimalist shoes,
Mm,
I definitely think there's you know you can do that as a just lifestyle shoe or whatever, wear it around town. There's other like kind of casual dressier brands like Limbs and other brands that are zero drop that you can kind of wear out on the town and not look like you're trying to flex with your runner shoes on in the
like
middle
a
of
like a dweeb.
right, because nobody's ever done it before, right?
No, I haven't.
Yeah.
Okay, so do shoes have mileage on them? And like, when should runners replace their shoes? Is that a thing?
Sure, absolutely. Yeah, and that's something else that's kind of variable. Depends on the shoe and depends on what the intent and the use is. So, racing shoes, because they're so lightweight, the mileage on those racing shoes are significantly less. Tend to be like a couple hundred miles, but you're not wearing them all the time,
Right.
and so. Um, But the higher cushion shoes and some of these newer foams, they're super soft and whatnot. And they whether it's FF Blast foam that Asics has, or Fresh foam that New Balance has, or whatever Hoka uses in theirs, it's all those they're super soft and squishy, but they have a lot of give to them, and so we're finding those shoes aren't lasting as long. Um, 300 to 400 miles, whereas like traditionally it used to be 400 to 500 miles on something like a Brooks. So it just varies shoe to shoe.
They're cheaping out on us,
I
man.
mean, I know it, but it's because the material is so much more airy. It's more lightweight. It's more compressible. The best thing you can do to extend the life of those shoes is to rotate them. So having multiple pairs of shoes, which you're sitting there like, well, yeah, now he's just trying to sell me an extra pair of shoes. But instead of those shoes dying at like 300 miles, you may get 400 to 500 miles out of them because you're rotating two pair every other day. And so over time, that's a savings. And it
He
helps
sold me,
prevent
Dusty.
injury
He
too.
sold me.
Yeah, I'm that kind of guy.
Okay, so replacing them essentially most likely 300 to 400 miles, unless you bought an older pair of shoes and you saved them in your closet and are about to bust them out. Maybe you can get 500 to 600 miles.
Right.
So and then the race day shoes have less. Obviously, they're lighter, is what you're saying. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Let's get into and well, any other questions about any of the shoe wear stuff like that before we get into some more of like training and PT related topics about running?
No, I think those were the main top points that a lot of people have. Definitely check out. So you think Fleet Feet, correct? People can go to Fleet Feet to get more of a accurate analysis of their gait, their cycle, and potential footwear.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, any local running store, whether it's Fleet Feet's all over the country, but there's a ton of mom and pop shops all over town, and or all over the country, and there's two other ones here in town that, I mean, they all have a experienced crew, and they can definitely help you out. So,
Gotcha.
So someone's not going to grab their minimalist running shoes, pop them on, and sprint out the door and start their run, right? They're going to have to warm up. Well, they should.
typically.
So, Dusty, tell us what a good warm up like would look like, and maybe give some variation of some different exercises and stuff like that someone can do.
Sure. So yeah, a good warm-up exercise is I like to do just leg swings, easy to do. Hold on to a pickup truck or whatever tree or whatever you have nearby, and swinging your legs across your body 10 to 20 times, and then side to side, and then turning, and then swing them forward and back. And it kind of just warms up some of those hip muscles and gets them moving a little bit. I like to do some calf raises. Personally, I like to do a variation of 10 times with my toes kind of pointed outward, 10 times neutral, pointed straight forward traditionally, and then 10 times pigeon-toed and toes kind of pointed inward. That just hits a different aspect of the calf muscles, and I focus on eccentrically lowering when I'm doing that. It kind of helps get a little bit of a stretch in. With it, I'll do walking hamstring stretches, so kind of walking, putting a leg out in front of me, heel on the ground, toes kind of pulled up, and then leaning forward, so I'm stretching the hamstring as I'm walking in a line there. Sometimes I'll do some butt kicks or some just kind of passive quad stretch, pulling my heel to my butt and holding it. Those are all kind of good, just get some things loosened up. And then I like to loosen up the arms and shoulders and neck too, so avoid tension in the upper body.
Yeah, don't be like my friend who gave himself some sort of
Right.
anterior shoulder pain. And you also, as mentioned earlier, like even like the first couple minutes, you just start off with like a walk to also get going before you just run into
Yeah,
it sometimes.
absolutely. Yeah. Usually I'll start with just a little bit of a walk, whether it's like just going to the next stop sign or street corner or whatever. Get out of the parking lot, just kind of walk with some intention, and then start off easy. I'm not trying to start off at record pace or anything. Just kind of get a feel for things and ease into it, and then just kind of check in with your body, see how you're feeling, and then get after it.
Let's go get after it, baby. Okay, I just actually thought of this one because it's interesting.
Yeah.
I want to know your experience with it because
Okay.
I know it's like a stereotype, but I've seen it in clinic. I'm wondering if you've seen it in clinic. The stereotype with runners that come in that have weak glutes and tight hamstrings. Do you see that?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So, sorry, what were you saying?
I was gonna say, and oftentimes weak hamstrings.
And weak hamstrings.
Yeah, yeah. So that whole posterior chain is just not something that they enjoy working on.
Yeah.
Leg day is run day, not a weight day. You know what I mean? So
Yeah. Okay, so you were talking about earlier, twice a week in terms of your lifting, focusing a lot on the single leg stance, single leg balance, lunges, split squats, and stuff like that. Can we talk a little bit more about if you were to give some of the runners because some people are like, well, I run, and then on my other days, like I don't want to do stuff at home. I want to go to the gym. What would be some good like weighted exercises
sure.
that they could also throw on top of all these calisthenic ones
Absolutely. Yeah.
that target the glutes and hamstrings, maybe?
Yeah. I mean, there's so many different varieties of, squats and deadlifts. I mean, you can do single leg RDLs on a lighter day. And then, on a heavier day, maybe you want to do a heavy day just to get some power in. There's nothing wrong with that. Especially running cross country, like we, had hills to climb, and we wanted some explosiveness for that. So we would do, I mean, even as cross country runners, we were doing plyometrics, box jumps, those kind of things one day, and the next day we were doing heavier squats and deadlifts. So you could vary that and do some single leg RDLs, and then couple that with heavier deadlift day. Squats, same thing. Doing squats or leg press, and then do the alternate day doing maybe lighter weights, doing split squats or single leg squats. You can do like single leg press. Would be good to do as well. What else? Uh, Different plank variations to engage your core, but then also doing with like you resisted with ankle weights. You can do like resisted clamshells or resisted hip abduction, side
Yeah.
leg lifts in
Yeah.
a side plank position. Go into full plank position and doing hip extension or reverse leg raises there, and so that's really good to kind of engage not only your glutes and hamstrings, but you're also getting some good core work too.
Yeah.
And so you're doubling down on it. But yeah, I've also been getting a lot more into what are they called? I'm getting blank. Working the adductors a little bit more, and so doing kind of side planks, but you're engaging those adductors. Copenhagen plank.
Yes. Yeah.
So those have been really fun to do, really challenging, and then it's engaging a muscle that it's often tight, but it's often tight because it's weak. So get some active flexibility and mobility in that muscle, and it's really good. Get a good release and a good burn.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point. And you brought it up about the hamstring too, about how some people feel tight in their hamstrings, but really it's probably because, they might be weak too, or a combination, or it might just be weakness presenting as tightness. That's an interesting point about the adductors as well, kind of those groin muscles. I've thought about it for the hamstring. I didn't think about it for the adductor. So that's a really good point.
Hamstring one has a good one with doing like a single leg bridge. So bridging up, but you put your foot on like a slider and you slowly eccentrically lower yourself down, and you work on that control for that hamstring, and it's a killer. But it makes a big difference.
Do you like Nordics hamstring curls?
Yeah,
Those
yeah,
suck, but they're good.
they are awful. Have you seen the new little door attachment thing that's like an at-home version? I'm interested to try that and
No.
see.
So just
Oh,
text me about it.
yeah, yeah, I'll text you about it. It's crazy, but I'm just interested to see how well it holds up.
Yeah, I don't want to tear my doors up, but if it works good.
Right.
Right now I'm literally just using a weightlifting belt, strapping my legs to the bench and leaning forward, and it works pretty good. But
Mhm.
yeah. Okay, so one more thing on this that I had thought of. So your warm up definitely seemed like you were focused mainly on dynamic stretching, not so much
Mhm.
static stretching. Do you find that when runners or even like yourself and everything, when you do those type of warm ups, you strength train, you take your body through full ranges of motion. Do you feel like you need to do any static stretching after the fact or afterwards, or do you feel like that's enough to keep your mobility?
I tend to do more static after a run, I'll still do the traditional like forward fold and get a hamstring stretch, maybe go into like a downward dog and stretch hamstring and calves, or step off of a curb or a step or something and stretch the calves out. Still stretch the quad, but um, yeah, I mean, it's good to kind of cool the body down that way. Uh, but pre-run, it's good to get that blood flowing a little bit more and get a little bit more active into it. So definitely doing more dynamic things on the front end. And then yeah, on your cross training days, your weight room days, whatnot, it's always I definitely spend a little bit of time either at the beginning or the end doing kind of more static stretching and yoga like positions. I think
Yeah.
yoga is really good for runners, and doesn't have to be complicated. It doesn't have to be an hour long class, but finding some different things just to move in different ways and get your body kind of moving is in a manner that isn't just forward and backward, up and down like running is. Um, so
Well, nice, man. Anybody got any questions on that?
No, I think that's perfect. I think we've covered a lot of points. A lot of people avoid strength training when they're runners, or sometimes people say, you know what, I don't need to warm up or cool it down. I'm just going to go in, which is great.
That's how a
Something that we
man
want to
does
ask
it.
you before we get into the fun questions that we've
oh
been
boy,
asking all the guests. Maybe you've heard this one, maybe you haven't. But when it comes to, I think when it comes to health and fitness, we're really in the change business, trying to help people change. There's a lot of the
hmm
science and whatnot, but a lot of it's like behavioral. So, in your experience, what's the biggest difference in why some people are really able to make those changes long term instead of just short term change?
yeah, I think it's just comes down to knowing having a process in place and knowing what the expectations are. It's not, I mean, running is just like anything else, diet and exercise related. It's not instant gratification. um, so I think it's having a procedure and a process, and when we don't have something that's regimented, it's not going to hold up. So for me, getting my journey back into running over the last 8 9 months, it was getting involved and consistently involved with this support system, that
Hmm.
group of people that were going to hold me accountable. And then yeah, I did that. I have two groups that I really like have in my corner of the ring there. One is for my cross training and kind of calisthenics, and one is for my running. And so yeah, that was something that really pulled me through and get me up whenever it was
Mm-hmm.
cold in the dark dead of winter, and you know keep me moving. And then now it's hot as hell, and you don't want to be out there again. So it's like, but they're all suffering with you. So there's something, suffering in numbers, I think, is a huge key in success there.
Yeah, my wife calls it making miseries instead of memories, but it
Yeah.
kind of works the
Yep.
same.
Right.
Okay, man. So we've got some we call fun rapid fire questions. You just answer them as quick as you can. Don't think too much about it. and then we'll wrap it up. Okay. All
Sounds
right.
good.
First question: Asics or Brooks?
Brooks.
Fartlek or tempo runs?
Bartlett.
Running hills or track sprints?
Track sprints.
Machines or dumbbells?
Dumbbells.
Upper body or lower body?
Lower body.
CrossFit, yay or nay?
Yeah.
That's all of them.
That's
You were-
it.
you were-
I
you were-
pictured you more of an ASICS guy, but Brooks surprised me.
Yeah, I don't know why I said that because I currently have the most miles on my Asics, but I had Brooks before that.
Nostalgia.
I think in general, I like the way Brooks is going right now a little more. But Asics, the one model that they haven't changed is the model I've been running in for over 15 years. So, so it's been working for me. So, might as well keep it up.
That's right. So Dusty, how can, if any of the listeners want to find you, what's the best way for people to find you or get in contact with you, especially if they're in the Chattanooga area?
Yeah, I mean,
Or
reach out
maybe
to
they don't
me.
want maybe you don't
Find
want
me.
anyone to find you.
Maybe I don't want anybody. Yeah, that might be a good idea. Yeah, I mean, I'm at the Benchmark Physical Therapy in St. Elmo on South Broad Street, and there, the foot of Lookout Mountain. So if you're in town, find me there. Stop by Fleet Feet in North Shore, and they can give you my info as well. Not hit me up on Instagram.
What's your username?
Is my username.
We can put it in the
Jeez, now you
show
put me
notes.
on the
Don't
spot.
worry.
Yeah, we'll
Well,
do that.
We'll
Yeah.
put it in the show
I don't
notes.
even remember my username. I have a PT. I have a PT account. So,
Sexy Beach Girl 93.
3D physio and fitness, I think is what it is. I had my support crew over here tell it to me.
Nice. Well, Dusty,
So,
thanks so much for being on, man. We definitely hit a lot of things, and thanks for your insight into all this stuff. Annabelle, you want to close it out?
Yeah, thank you, man. I learned a lot, took some notes, and I think all the listeners are really going to take a lot from this. And like we like telling you guys, remember, you're human. You should not seek perfection, but daily improvement. See you
All right.
guys.